Naledi's feet hit the Seoul pavement hard. She had one sandal that was splitting at the sole. She could feel the cold concrete through the gap every third step. Her breathing was loud in her own ears. Around her, Seoul moved the way it always moved, enormous, the streets near Mapo full of foot traffic and noise and the smell of grilling meat from a Pojangmaka cart, and nobody looked at her because Seoul had seen everything and had long since stopped being surprised by any of it. She had been in Korea for 14 days. She cut left through a narrow alley between two buildings, past a stack of flattened cardboard boxes and a bicycle chained to nothing useful, and pressed herself against the wall to listen. Her chest was burning. She counted, heard no following footsteps, heard only the city. She did not know this city. She did not speak this language beyond the 20 words the brothers had taught her, all of them instructions. Carry this. Bring that. Wake up. Work. She did not know which direction was which, did not know what the sign said, did not know if what she was doing was survivable. What she knew was the farm, which was really 3 men, 2 brothers, and a cousin, and a broken greenhouse that grew nothing, in a rented lot outside the city, had not been what they told her parents it would be. And she was not going back. She ran until the alley opened onto a wide, loud intersection. 6 lanes of traffic, light cycling, pedestrians banked on all 4 sides waiting for the signal. Buses. Taxis. The whole moving weight of a city that had not asked for her and did not know her name. She stopped at the edge of the pavement, doubled over, hands on her knees, pulling air in through her mouth. That was when she saw the old woman. She was small, not diminished, exactly, but concentrated, as if time had pressed everything unnecessary out of her and left only the essential thing. She was standing at the edge of the crosswalk, not at the button, not in the cluster of other pedestrians who were scrolling their phones and readying to cross. She was standing apart, at the very lip of the curb, and she was looking at the traffic with an expression Naledi recognized immediately. Fear. Not the ordinary city fear of a busy road. The deep one that freezes you. One that makes 6 lanes of moving metal look like a wall. The signal changed. The pedestrian light went green. The crowd surged forward. The old woman did not move. The light counted down. People flowed around her. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked. The light went red and the traffic swelled back into the intersection, and the old woman was still standing exactly where she had been, both hands folded around a cloth bag, her knuckles pressed together. Naledi crossed to her. Halmoni, she said, one of her 20 words, the one for grandmother, the one she had heard the brothers use, and touched the old woman's arm. The old woman, startled, looked up. Her eyes were watery, dark and very, very lost. Naledi pointed at the other side of the road. You want to go? She mind walking with her fingers. Cross. The old woman looked at her and said something in Korean that Naledi could not follow, 3 or 4 sentences, and then her voice dropped, broke. Naledi did not understand the words. She understood everything else. Come, she said. She held out her hand. The old woman took it. They waited for the signal. When the light changed and the crowd moved, Naledi moved with it, matching the old woman's pace exactly, one hand holding hers, the other extended in case she stumbled. The old woman walked with deliberate steps, watching the road under her feet. Around them people overtook and dispersed and vanished into the city. They reached the other side. The old woman stopped, and said something, not to Naledi, not really, more to herself, and shook her head. Then she looked directly at Naledi, and said, in English, please. Take me home. I am lost. Naledi looked at this fugitive old woman. She had no money. She had a cracked phone with 40% battery and a Korean SIM the brothers had given her that was still, somehow, working. She did not know this city. She did not know this woman. She was running from people who believed she was their property. Okay, I will take you home. But before you understand what happened next, you need to understand who Naledi was before Korea. Because she did not start as a girl running through foreign streets with one broken sandal and 20 words of a language not her own. She started somewhere else entirely, and what happened to her is the kind of thing that should not happen, which means it happens often enough that we have almost stopped being shocked by it. Naledi Dlamini was born in a village outside Limpopo, South Africa. The middle child of 5. Her father, Sifo, was a man who worked hard and was unlucky, not lazy, not cruel, just devastatingly unlucky in the way that some men are, the way that life arranges itself against certain people without apparent reason or relief. He had borrowed money to expand a small farm. The rain did not come the year he needed it. He borrowed more. The rain still did not come. By the time Naledi was 17, the debt had become a number her father could not say out loud without his voice changing. Her mother, Lindayo, was a woman who loved her children completely and had no tools left to protect them with. The Korean men came through a broker. A man from the nearest town who said he knew people, which was always how these things started, someone who knew people. The offer was simple: a farming operation in Korea needed workers. It was legal, documented, legitimate. Naledi would work for 1 season, 18 weeks, and her wages would be sent directly against the family debt. When the debt was cleared, she would come home. Her father signed. Her mother cried in the kitchen where she thought no one could hear her. Naledi packed a bag and told her younger sister that she would be back before Christmas and that she should keep up with school. She got on a plane for the first time in her life. The farm was not a farm. It was 3 men in a greenhouse that wasn't growing anything, which meant Naledi's labor, cleaning, cooking, fetching, running errands, had nothing to do with agriculture and everything to do with the fact that they had acquired, through a broker, a girl who had no status in this country, no contacts, no language, and no way out. She lasted 14 days. On the 14th morning she was sent to buy supplies from a shop 2 streets away. They gave her money and expected her back in 20 minutes. She spent 12 of those minutes buying what they asked for, left the bag outside the shop door, and ran. The old woman's name was Kwon Sun-hee. Naledi found this out from the phone. She typed "What is your name" into a translation app and showed Sun-hee the screen, and Sun-hee pointed at herself and said her name clearly and then typed into the phone in Korean and showed Naledi the Korean symbols, and Naledi sounded them out badly and Sun-hee laughed for the first time, a sound like something waking up. They were sitting on a low wall near a bus stop while Naledi figured out the taxi. She had the cracked phone. She had the SIM. She opened a taxi app she had seen the brothers use and stared at it for a moment, because it required a destination address and she did not have one. She showed the phone to Sun. He took the phone in both hands, typed an address with one finger, and handed it back. Naledi looked at the address and looked at the estimated price. She had no money. Neither of them had anything. Naledi sat with this for exactly 15 seconds. Then she remembered something. The brothers had registered the taxi app to an account. The account still had a card attached to it. They had not thought to block it because they had not expected her to be using it. She booked the taxi. She would deal with the consequences of that later. Later was a country she intended to reach before she started worrying about it. The car came in 4 minutes. They got in. Sun-hee gave the address to the driver and they moved through the city with a silence that belongs to 2 people who have no shared language and have somehow agreed to trust each other. At one point Sun-hee looked out the window and said something that Naledi did not understand. Then she turned and looked at Naledi directly and said, in English, "My daughter, she died last week. She liked to drive fast, too fast." Naledi reached over and placed her hand over the old woman's hand on the seat between them. Sun-hee turned her hand over and held on. The house was not a house. When the taxi slowed at the gate and Naledi looked up through the cracked screen of the phone at the entrance, she understood she had made a mistake about what she was walking into. Not a dangerous mistake. A category mistake. She had been thinking, house, gate, neighborhood. She had not been thinking, compound, security, a wealth that does not announce itself because it does not need to. 2 men in dark clothing came through the gate at speed the moment the taxi stopped. Not toward Naledi. Toward the old woman. One of them opened the door and spoke rapidly and with visible relief, his voice tight with stress of someone who had been looking for a long time. Son, he replied. She said several things. He listened. He looked at Naledi. Then someone else came through the gate. He was not old. He was not small. He walked the way men walk when they are used to every room rearranging itself around their arrival, not arrogant, exactly, but settled in a way that takes years and a certain type of life to produce. He came directly to the taxi. He checked his mother, just eyes moving over her face, her hands, the cloth bag, the way someone checks something precious that has been found after being lost. Then he looked at Naledi. Naledi looked back. He said something. One of his men translated, "He asks who you are." "My name is Naledi, I found her at a crossing on Mapadero. She could not get across the road. I brought her home." The man translated. "He asks where you live," the translator said. "He will have you taken home." Naledi thought about this question for a moment. The honest answer was that she had nowhere. The tactical answer was something she needed to construct, which required more Korean than she had and more time than she could ask for. "I am not from Seoul." The translator conveyed this. He asks, "From where?" "South Africa." She did not leave that evening. This was not because she was held. She was not held. It was because Sun Hee, who turned out to have a will that could redirect weather, said something to her son that resulted in a guest room being prepared and food appearing and nobody asking Naledi any further questions until the following morning. She slept in a real bed for the first time in 2 weeks. She stared at the ceiling for a long time first. Then she slept like someone falling. What happened over the following days was not simple, and Naledi did not pretend it was. She was not a girl who simplified things for comfort. The truth was, Sehun's men found out about the brothers within 48 hours. She had not told them. She had said only enough for them to understand she had arrived through a broker arrangement that had not been what it claimed. That was enough. Sehun had resources that made 48 hours feel luxurious. What happened to the brothers was not something she asked about. She did not need to ask. Sun Hee recovered from her wandering, from her grief, the way the sea recovers after a storm, not by returning to what it was, but by settling into something new. She and Naledi developed a language between them that was part translation app, part gesture, part communication that does not require words at all. Sun Hee was teaching her 3 Korean words a day. In return, Naledi taught her Sepedi phrases that made the old woman laugh until her eyes watered. Sehun watched this from a distance. He was not a man who rushed toward things. He was also not a man who let important things pass without being claimed. He asked her, on the 6th day, to tell him about her village. She told him. Not everything, but enough. About Limpopo. About her father's farm and the debt and the broker and the signing of papers in a kitchen where her mother was crying in the next room. She told it without asking for anything, because she had learned in 17 years of life that asking loudly often produced less than speaking. He listened. He asked some questions, not sympathetic questions, the performative one, but operational ones. How far from the nearest town? What the roads were like? Water situation? Schools? She answered. She did not know why he was asking. She answered anyway. 3 weeks later, she was standing in a field outside her village watching a helicopter descend from the sky. She had known it was coming. Sehun had told her, or rather, had had it translated to her, in that logistical way of his, that he was coming to see the place. She had nodded and thought she understood what that meant, and she had been wrong, because she had been imagining a car, a truck, an arriving that people from outside did when they came to a place like hers. She had not imagined this. The helicopter was large and very loud, and the sound of it reached the village about 3 minutes before it appeared over the tree line, which meant that by the time it descended into the field, approximately 70 people had already gathered at the fence. Naledi turned and looked at them. Her mother was at the front, standing completely still. Her hands pressed flat against her chest. Her face, Naledi had seen her mother afraid before, had seen her happy before, had seen her cry, had seen her angry, but she had never seen this expression of a woman watching something she had never had a category for enter the world she thought she knew. The children were different. The children had not yet learned to be astonished. They ran toward the fence in a wave, shouting, pointing upward, some of them laughing the high laugh that comes from something bigger than joy. Two small boys dropped to their stomachs in the grass at the edge of the field to feel the wind from the rotors on their faces. An older man, one of the village elders, a man of about 70 who had seen many things, took off his hat and held it to his chest and did not move for a long time. The helicopter landed. The grass bent flat in all directions from the pressure of it. Sehun stepped out first, then helped Sun-hee, who had insisted on coming, who had said something to her son that had clearly not been a request. Sun-hee stepped onto South African soil and looked around the dry grass, the red earth, the blue sky that went on further than the Seoul sky ever seemed to, and closed her eyes. Naledi met them at the edge of the field. Sun-hee reached up and touched her face. Whispered something. Naledi's translator, a young man Sehun had brought, murmured, "She says, 'Now I understand you.'" Her father did not know what to say when he met Sehun. This was unusual. Naledi Dlamini was a man who always had words, who filled difficult silences with speech because silence in difficult rooms had always meant something was about to go badly. But standing in his own yard, before this Korean man who had come out of a helicopter, he found that he had nothing ready. Sehun did not require speech from him. What he did, the first afternoon, was walk. He walked the village. He walked the road, what existed of it, which was eroded and impassable in sections after rain. He walked to the water source, which was a standpipe shared by several families, which ran dry twice a week. He looked at the school, which was one room, one teacher, for grades. He walked back. He said nothing that afternoon. In the evening, Naledi's mother fed everyone. The table was extended with a board from the barn and covered with plastic. Sun-hee sat beside Lindayo and between the translation app and the food and the children who kept appearing in the doorway to look at the visitors, they managed something that resembled a dinner and then gradually became one. Naledi sat next to Sehun and was aware of the 6 inches of space between them. "Why did you come yourself?" she asked him. She meant, why not just send people? Why not just write a number on a paper? Why not manage this from a distance, the way men with his kind of resources managed things, invisibly, through others? "Because you are not a report," he said. "What your parents did was very wrong. What was done to you was wrong. I cannot fix that. But I can see what is here. And decide what should be here. And that requires coming. You are not doing this because you feel guilty." "No," he agreed. "Then why?" He looked at the loud table around them. His mother was teaching Lindayo a Korean word and getting the pronunciation wrong on purpose to make her laugh. "Because I want to, and I want to ask your permission first." She looked at her village. The single light hanging from the wire above the yard. The children near the fence watching the helicopter that was still, impossibly, sitting in the field. Her father's hands resting on the table, the hands that had signed a paper in this kitchen that he had never recovered from signing. Then ask. "May I fix your village?" "Not for me, for them." "Yes, for them." "Then yes," she said. What happened after that was not magic. It was money and planning and people doing work, which is what change always actually is underneath the story of it. Roads came first. The crew arrived within 3 weeks, real grading equipment, proper surfacing, a road that does not disappear after rain. The children stood at the edge and watched the machines and asked questions that nobody could fully answer about how the things moved and why. Water came second. A proper system, pumped, consistent, connected to every household compound. The day it was switched on, Naledi's mother stood at her own tap and turned it and watched clean water run and did not move for a long time. The school was rebuilt. Not expanded, rebuilt from the beginning, 3 rooms, a real structure, a latrine that worked, books arriving in boxes that the children unpacked with reverence that people give things they have wanted for a long time. Network towers went up on the hill. The village had signal for the first time. People called relatives they had not spoken to in years. Naledi's sister called her school friend in Johannesburg and stayed on the phone for so long her mother had to come and take it away. The elder who had held his hat when the helicopter landed walked to the new road one morning alone and stood on it for a while and then went home and did not say much about it to anyone, the way people process enormous things, slowly, in the early morning. Sehun came back for months after the work was finished. He came without the helicopter this time. He came by road, the new one, in a truck, arriving in the afternoon when the light was golden over the grass, and he walked into the village the way someone arrives when they are not performing an arrival but simply returning to a place they have decided matters. He found Naledi at the school, helping her sister study. He sat on the wall outside and waited. When she came out she saw him. She stopped. Neither of them said anything for a moment in the way of two people who have been talking in translation for months and have reached the point where translation is no longer the main obstacle. "You came back." "I said I would." She sat on the wall beside him. The school sounds came from inside. Somewhere across the village, her mother's voice, calling something to a neighbor. "The road is good," she said. "Yes. My father drove on it for the first time last week." He cried. "He wanted me to say," she stopped. "He is not a man who says things easily. He asked me to tell you that he is sorry for what he signed, and that he does not have the words for the rest. Tell him that the rest does not require words." She nodded. The afternoon sat between them, unhurried. "I have something to ask you." She waited. "I am not asking because of what you did for my mother. I am asking because of who you are. Which I have now had enough time to know is not the same thing. You are not an obligation, Naledi. You are not a debt repaid. You understand the difference." "I understand," she whispered. "Then I am asking if you will marry me." He said it the way he said every serious thing, without decoration, without performance, like something that had been true for a while and was now simply being said aloud. She looked at her village. She thought about the girl she had been. The one who boarded a plane for the first time with a bag and a promise and arrived into something that tried to make her nothing. The one who ran through foreign streets with one broken sandal and 20 words and no money. The one who stopped for an old woman at a crossing because stopping was simply what you did when someone needed stopping for. She thought about her mother at a running tap. She thought about the children, that first day, throwing themselves into the grass to feel the helicopter wind on their faces. She thought about her father, driving the road. "You fixed my village," she said. "No, you brought me to it. I will marry you." He reached into his jacket pocket and produced a ring. Not enormous. Not performative. A ring chosen by someone who had paid attention. She held out her hand. He put it on. Across the field, two children appeared at the fence, having followed him from the truck as they followed all interesting arrivals, and stood watching with enormous eyes. One of them pointed at the ring. The other clapped. Naledi looked at them. She started laughing. Her parents were told that evening. Her father sat in a chair in the kitchen for a very long time without speaking. Then he stood up and went outside and came back in and said, "My daughter was sold for a debt and came back to free us all." He did not say it to anyone in particular. He said it to the room, to the air, to the kitchen where he had signed a paper that had broken something in him. Then he sat back down. Linde cried. She had been waiting to cry properly for months and now she did, not sadly, just fully, the crying that is actually relief with tears. Naledi held her mother's hand and did not tell her to stop. What Naledi Dlamini's story is, at its heart, is not a love story. Or rather, it is not only that. It is the story of a girl who was treated as a thing that could be exchanged, and refused, in every action she took, to become one. She ran when running was the only door. She stopped for an old woman when stopping cost her time she did not have. She got into a taxi with no money and rode it to a house she did not know because a stranger was lost and had asked her plainly. She did none of this to be rewarded. She did it because she was raised in a house with one water tap and not enough to eat, but with her mother's voice and her father's hands, to understand that a person is not measured by what they have. They are measured by what they do with what they have, which in Naledi's case was nothing. No money. No language. No power. And everything changed. Not because she was exceptional. Because she was consistent. Because the same girl who stopped at a crossing also ran from a farm. Also held an old woman's hand in a taxi. Also said, "Not for me, ing for them." Also held out her hand and said yes to a future she had built by choosing, every time, the thing that asked the most of her. The village has a road now. The children have a school. The tap runs clean every day. And somewhere in a kitchen in Limpopo, a man who once signed a piece of paper he has never forgiven himself for sits at a table that is full, in a house that is warm, on a road that goes somewhere. And he drives it sometimes, in the early morning, alone. Just to feel it under him. Just to remember, his daughter came home. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. Have you ever done something for someone else when you had nothing left to give? Naledi's story proves that some choices return to us in ways we never imagined. Subscribe. The next story is waiting.